The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the empty space between three dying stars, and inside it, 4,000 species decided the fate of the universe. Crystal beings that lived for 10,000 years sat next to creatures made of living metal. Gas giants who thought in colors argued with insect swarms who shared one mind. They were all different, but they all agreed on one thing. Humans were nothing special. Ambassador Vance stood at the back of the Great Hall, watching the other species talk and trade and make deals. She wore simple gray clothes. Her skin was soft and breakable. Her life would last maybe 80 years if she was lucky. To the ancient beings around her, she was like a fruit fly at a meeting of gods. A tall creature with silver scales walked past her. It was one of the warrior species that had conquered 100 star systems. The looked down at and made a sound like laughing. "Little mayfly," it said, "still here. I thought your kind would have died out by now." Smiled politely. "We are still learning from our betters," she said. "Thank you for your patience with us." The walked away, already forgetting she existed. 300 years ago, humans had discovered they were not alone in the universe. A conquered ship had found Earth and invited humanity to join the galactic community. The other species had expected humans to be grateful. They had expected humans to bow down before their advanced technology and ancient wisdom. And humans did exactly that. They acted amazed at everything. They asked simple questions. They made mistakes that made other species laugh. They accepted the worst trade deals. They took the smallest territories. They never complained when other species treated them like children. The Conquered gave humanity one small sector at the edge of the galaxy. It had 3 rocky planets and a dying sun. The other species thought they were being generous. Humans smiled and said thank you. What no one knew was that humans had read their own history books. Remembered the stories her grandmother told her. Stories about what happened on Earth when powerful nations found weaker ones. Stories about lands stolen and peoples destroyed. Stories about smiling faces hiding cruel intentions. Humans knew exactly what happened when a strong civilization met a weak one. So they pretended to be weak. It was the greatest lie ever told. Every human in the galaxy was part of it. The clumsy scientists who seemed to barely understand alien technology. They were actually studying it, taking it apart, learning its secrets. The foolish merchants who made bad deals. They were mapping trade routes and gathering information. The quiet diplomats who sat in the back of meetings. They were watching and listening and sending reports back to Earth. Was not really an ambassador. She was a spy. They were all spies. Back on Earth and its colony worlds, hidden from all outside eyes, humanity was building. They took every piece of alien technology they could find and made it better. They developed weapons that the Conquered could not imagine. They built ships in secret places that existed between dimensions, invisible to any scanner. And they trained. Every human learned to fight. Every human learned to survive. They remembered all the wars they had fought against each other, all the terrible weapons they had created to kill their own kind. Now they turned all that knowledge outward, preparing for the day when they would need it. But that day had not come yet. So stood in the back of the Great Hall, small and quiet and easily forgotten. A group of crystalline beings floated past her. They were the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. One of them paused and looked with eyes made of living light. "Strange little creatures," it said to its companions. "They seem so empty. I cannot sense any psychic presence from them at all. It is like they have no souls." The others made sounds of agreement. "A dead-end species," another said. "They will be gone in a few thousand years. The universe will not notice." Kept her face calm and friendly. Inside, she was smiling a different kind of smile. They could not read human minds because human minds were chaos. Every other species in the galaxy had some kind of mental order. The insect swarms shared thoughts. The crystal beings had perfect logical minds. Even the warriors had a pack mentality that connected them. But humans, each human mind was a storm of contradictions. Love and hate, hope and fear, kindness and cruelty. Every human was a universe unto themselves, unpredictable and untouchable. The alien psychics looked at human minds and saw only static. They thought this meant humans were primitive. They were wrong. Returned to her small quarters that night. She locked the door and activated the security systems that the Conquered did not know existed. Then she opened a hidden channel to Earth. "Report," said a voice from home. "Nothing has changed," said. "They still see us as insects. They still ignore us completely." "Good," the voice replied. "Continue the mission. Watch and wait. Our time will come." Ended the transmission and looked out her window at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were hiding. Human soldiers were training. Human scientists were building wonders and terrors that would shake the galaxy. The Conquered thought they knew what humans were. They were wrong. And one day, they would learn the truth. The first warning came from a small observation station at the very edge of the galaxy. A young soldier was watching his scanners when something impossible appeared. Ships. Thousands of them. Millions of them. More ships than he had ever seen, pouring out of the empty void between galaxies like a river of death. He sent one message before his station was destroyed. That message was only 2 words. "They're here." The hive had arrived. No one knew where they came from. Some scientists believed they were older than the stars themselves. Others thought they came from another galaxy, one they had already eaten completely. What everyone knew was simple: they consumed everything. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They simply ate. Their ships were not made of metal or crystal. They were made of flesh and bone, grown from the bodies of species they had devoured long ago. Each ship was alive, hungry, and connected to the hive queen who controlled them all with her terrible mind. The outer colonies fell in days. Billions of beings died screaming as the swarm washed over their worlds. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones were taken alive, their bodies broken down and absorbed into the hive. The Galactic Conquered gathered its fleets. They sent their greatest warriors, 10,000 ships armed with weapons that could crack planets. They contributed their ancient technology, shields that had never been broken. A dozen other species added their strength to the armada. It was the largest military force in the history of the galaxy. It met at the edge of space, ready to defend civilization itself. The battle lasted 72 hours. When it was over, the Conquered fleet was gone. Not defeated, not retreating. Gone. They had torn through them like a knife through paper. The shields that had never been broken shattered like glass. The weapons that could crack planets did nothing against ships that healed themselves faster than they could be damaged. The home world fell next. Then 3 colony spheres. Then a dozen more systems. The swarm grew larger with each world it consumed, adding the biomass of entire civilizations to its hungry fleet. In the Great Hall of the Conquered, there was only panic. Watch the chaos from her usual spot in the back. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years now clung to each other in terror. The proud wept openly. The logical flickered with colors that meant despair. Everywhere she looked, she saw the same thing: beings who had never known real fear now drowning in it. The Elder, the oldest living being in the galaxy, rose to speak. The hall fell silent. "We have calculated all possible outcomes," the Elder said, its voice heavy with grief. "There is no scenario in which we survive. They cannot be stopped. They cannot be reasoned with. In 4 solar cycles they will reach the core worlds. In 6 they will have consumed everything." The Elder paused, and when it spoke again, its voice broke. "We recommend that all species use their remaining time to say goodbye to loved ones. Record your histories so that something of us might survive in the void. The Galactic Conquered has failed. May the stars remember that we existed." The hall exploded into screaming and crying. Some species tried to run, though there was nowhere to go. Others simply collapsed, giving up. The smell of fear filled the air. In the chaos, no one noticed slip away. She returned to her quarters and locked the door. Her hands were steady as she activated the hidden communication system. This time, she used a frequency that no one in the galaxy knew existed. It cut through dimensions, reaching Earth in seconds instead of years. "This is Vance," she said. "Priority 1, they have arrived. The Conquered is broken. Total extinction is projected in 4 to 6 cycles." There was a long pause. Then a new voice answered. It was calm and cold and carried the weight of centuries of preparation. "Understood, Agent Vance. Return to your post and maintain cover for the next 12 hours. After that, the mask comes off." "What about the other species?" asked. "They're terrified. They think they're all going to die." "They might be right," the voice said, "but not if we have anything to say about it. Humanity has been waiting for this moment for 300 years. It's time to show the galaxy what we really are." The channel closed. Sat in the darkness of her room, listening to the distant sounds of panic and despair from the Great Hall. 12 hours. In 12 hours, everything would change. She thought about all the years she had spent pretending to be small and weak and unimportant. She thought about the insults she had swallowed, the laughter she had endured, the way other species looked at her like she was nothing. Soon, they would look at her very differently. Opened a hidden panel in her wall and pulled out a black uniform. It was not the gray clothes of a humble ambassador. It was the uniform of a Terran intelligence officer, marked with the symbols of a rank she had held in secret for 20 years. She laid the uniform on her bed and looked at it for a long moment. "It's time," she whispered to herself. "Finally, it's time." Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there they were still coming, eating worlds and growing stronger. They thought they were unstoppable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 12 hours passed like a slow dream. The Conquered station grew quiet as species stopped fighting the truth and began to accept their end. Some prayed to gods they had not believed in for centuries. Others simply sat in silence, holding loved ones close. Then every screen on the station turned on at once. A human woman appeared. She wore a black uniform covered in medals and symbols that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. Her hair was gray, her face was lined with age, but her eyes burned with cold fire. Behind her stood a command center filled with humans in identical uniforms, all working at stations that showed maps and numbers and things that made no sense. "This is Fleet Admiral Way of the Terran Dominion," the woman said. Her voice was hard as stone. "I am broadcasting on every frequency in the galaxy. Every species will hear this message." In the Great Hall, beings stopped their crying and looked up at the screens. On 1,000 worlds, on 10,000 ships, the same face appeared. They themselves paused in their consumption as the signal reached even their flesh ships. "For 300 years," Admiral continued, "humanity has lived among you as guests. We accepted your charity. We endured your insults. We smiled when you called us mayflies and primitives and dead-end creatures. We let you believe we were nothing." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn through the screen. "We lied." The image changed. The screens now showed something that made every being in the galaxy gasp. It was a fleet of ships, but not like any ships they had ever seen. These vessels were massive, covered in weapons that glowed with strange energy. They moved through space in perfect formation, thousands upon thousands of them, emerging from holes in reality itself. "While you ignored us, we studied you," Admiral's voice continued over the images. "We took your technology and we improved it. We found the weaknesses in your weapons and we fixed them. We discovered secrets of the universe that you never imagined. And we built. In hidden dimensions, in places your sensors could never find, we built an empire." The fleet kept coming. 12,000 ships. then 20,000, then more, filling the screen until they looked like a river of steel and fire. In the great hall, the commander who had called a mayfly fell to his knees. His silver scales had turned pale with shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." But it was not impossible, it was happening. The screens changed again to show Admiral. They believe they are the ultimate predators. They believe they cannot be stopped. They are about to discover that Earth created something far more dangerous than any hive mind. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Earth created us, humans. We are a species that has spent its entire history trying to kill itself. We invented war before we invented writing. We created weapons of mass destruction for fun. We split atoms and burned our own sky and still kept going. Every terrible thing you can imagine, we have done it to each other. Admiral stood up from her chair. And now, for the first time in our history, we turn all of that outward. They have never faced a species like us. They have never met creatures who fight not for survival but out of pure, burning spite. They will learn. The screens went dark for a moment, then appeared. She stood in the great hall of the conquered, but she was no longer the quiet ambassador in gray clothes. She wore the black uniform of Terran intelligence. Her posture had changed. Her voice had changed. Everything about her had changed. "My name is Colonel Vance," she said. "For 20 years I have served as an intelligence operative in this station. Every human you have met in the Conquered was like me. We were never diplomats or merchants or scientists. We were spies, all of us, from the beginning." The beings around her stared in shock. The elder flickered with colors no one had ever seen before, emotions too complex for translation. "But that time is over now," continued. "Humanity is done hiding. They have given us a reason to reveal ourselves, and we will answer that reason with fire." She touched a device on her wrist, and behind her, space itself seemed to tear open. Through the tear came human soldiers in armor that made them look like metal giants. They moved with perfect precision, taking positions around the great hall. Their weapons hummed with barely contained power. "The Terran First Fleet is already moving to intercept the swarm," said. "Admiral will lead the attack personally. In the meantime, Terran forces will be deployed to protect all major conquered worlds." The commander stumbled toward her. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been shame. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "We treated you like animals, we mocked you, we gave you nothing. Why would you save us?" Looked at him for a long moment, then she answered. "Because we know what it is like to be small and afraid. We know what it is like to face extinction. We have been where you are now many times, and we decided long ago that if we ever had the power to save others from that fear, we would use it." She turned to face the entire hall. "Humanity does not forget cruelty, but we also do not forget mercy. Today you will receive our mercy. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will deserve it." The screens throughout the galaxy showed the Terran fleet changing course, moving toward them with terrible speed. The galaxy held its breath. The Hive Queen had consumed 10,000 civilizations across 3 galaxies. She had memories that stretched back millions of years, passed down from queen to queen in an unbroken line of hunger and conquest. She had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. Nothing had ever stopped her kind. When she felt the Terran fleet approaching, she was not afraid. She was curious. These humans were small and soft and short-lived. Her hive had already tasted a few of them from the outer colonies. Their flesh was nothing special. Their technology, according to her spies, was primitive. They would be consumed like all the others. But as the human fleet emerged from the strange space steers, the Queen felt something she had not felt in a very long time: confusion. The ships were wrong. They moved wrong. They felt wrong. Her psychic senses, which could normally read the fear and despair of approaching prey, found only static when she reached toward the human vessels. It was like trying to grab smoke. "Interesting," she said through 1,000 mouths across her fleet. "These little creatures have secrets." Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TSS Unconquered. Around her, human officers worked their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Some of their grandparents had trained for this moment. 300 years of preparation came down to the next few hours. "The fleet is holding position," her tactical officer reported. "They seem to be waiting for us." Nodded. "They're used to prey coming to them in terror. Let's show them what it feels like to face a predator." She opened a channel to her entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral. You know why we're here. You know what's at stake. Those things out there have eaten galaxies. They think they're at the top of the food chain." She paused. "They're wrong. Today we show them what humanity really is. Attack pattern Omega. No mercy, no retreat." 20,000 Terran ships surged forward. They met them with a wall of flesh ships, each one larger than a city. They opened their mouths, which were also weapons, and fired streams of concentrated acid and biological missiles. It was an attack that had melted the shields of the fleet like butter. The acid hit the Terran shields and stopped. The biological missiles exploded harmlessly against barriers that existed partially in other dimensions. The human ships kept coming, untouched. The Queen felt something new, something cold. It might have been fear. The Terran ships returned fire. Their weapons were not energy beams or missiles or anything they had seen before. They fired concentrated gravity, folding space itself into weapons. They fired antimatter wrapped in stable containment fields. They fired things that had no name in any language but human. Ships began to die. Not slowly, not gradually. They died in explosions of purple blood and burning bone. Ships that had survived for 10,000 years were torn apart in seconds. The Queen screamed through her hive mind, and for the first time in her ancient memory, that scream was not hunger. It was pain. She reached out with her psychic power, the weapon that had broken 1,000,000 species before. She would crush these humans mentally, turn their own minds against them. She had done it countless times. It always worked. She touched the mind of Admiral, and she recoiled in horror. Human minds were nothing like anything she had encountered. There was no order, no structure, no hive. Each human mind was a chaos of contradictions. Love and hatred tangled together, fear and courage existing in the same moment. Memories of terrible things done and beautiful things created, all mixed together in a storm that never stopped. It was like trying to grab a hurricane. But worse than the chaos was the thing underneath it. In the deepest part of human minds, the Queen found something that made her ancient consciousness shudder. She found rage. Not hot anger, but cold fury, buried under centuries of smiling and pretending and swallowing insults. Every time a human had been called primitive, every time they had been dismissed, every time they had been treated as nothing. Humans remembered all of it, and they were angry. The Queen tried to pull away, but she had opened a connection. Now human thoughts poured into her mind, thoughts that burned like fire. "You think you know hunger," she heard in a voice that was somehow all of humanity at once. "You eat flesh. We eat everything, ideas, worlds, our own history. We consume ourselves and keep going. You have never faced anything like us." The Queen screamed again. This time her scream spread through the entire hive. Every in the fleet felt her terror and confusion. For the first time in their existence, the swarm faltered. Admiral smiled grimly. "Now," she said, "deploy the Genesis weapon." Deep in the heart of the Terran fleet, a single ship opened its belly. Inside was a device that human scientists had spent 200 years building. It was called the Genesis weapon, but there was nothing of creation in it. It was a singularity bomb, a collapsed star wrapped in containment fields, designed to destroy everything within a light year. It launched toward the heart of the fleet, toward the Queen herself. The Queen saw it coming. She understood what it was. She tried to move, tried to escape, but her fleet was in chaos, her hive mind shattered by contact with human thoughts. "Please," she begged, speaking directly to Admiral. "We can negotiate. We can leave this galaxy. We can." "No," said, "you cannot." The Genesis weapon detonated. For one perfect moment, a new star was born in the darkness between worlds. Then it collapsed, taking with it the Queen and 90% of her fleet. The remaining ships, cut off from their queen's mind, went mad. They turned on each other or simply stopped moving, floating dead in the void. The battle was over. It had lasted 11 minutes. Admiral looked at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. "Humanity remembers," she said quietly, "and humanity always pays its debts." The galaxy was silent for 3 days after the battle. On every world, in every station, beings sat in shock and tried to understand what had happened. The who had seemed like the end of all things were gone, destroyed in 11 minutes by a species that everyone had thought was primitive and weak. It was like watching a small insect kill a god. In the Great Hall of the Conquered, the survivors gathered again, but everything was different now. The proud seats of the elder races were empty or broken. The fancy decorations had been torn down during the panic. The air still smelled of fear and smoke. And at the center of the hall, where no human had ever been allowed to stand, Admiral waited. She stood alone, her black uniform unmarked by the battle. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of Terran ships. They floated above every major conquered world, not attacking, not threatening, just watching, waiting. The Elder was the first to speak. Its crystal body was cracked and dull, damaged by the psychic backlash of the Queen's death. Its voice was weak. "What do you want from us?" Admiral studied the ancient being for a long moment. Then she began to speak. "For 300 years humanity hid among you. We lied to you every single day. We pretended to be weak because we knew that if you discovered our true power you would fear us. And fear leads to attack. We had seen it in our own history. We had done it to each other. So we chose deception over war." She walked slowly around the center of the hall, looking at each species in turn. "But deception has a cost. Every insult we swallowed became anger. Every time you laughed at us, we remembered. Every time you called us mayflies or primitives or nothing, we added it to a list. A very long list." The commander lowered his head in shame. Around the hall, other beings did the same. "We could have revealed ourselves long ago," continued. "We could have taken over this galaxy a century after we joined the Conquered. Our technology was already better than yours. Our soldiers were already stronger. But we chose not to. Do you know why?" No one answered. No one dared. "Because we know what we are." His voice became softer, almost sad. "Humans are dangerous, not because of our weapons or our technology, but because of what lives inside us. We have a darkness that other species do not understand. We have destroyed ourselves a dozen times. We have invented ways to kill each other that would give your worst nightmares bad dreams." She stopped walking and faced the assembled beings. "If we had revealed our power before we were ready, that darkness would have consumed us. We would have become conquerors, tyrants. We would have been worse than they because we would have done it on purpose. We would have enjoyed it." The words hung in the air like poison. "So we waited. We built our power in secret, but we also built something else. We built control. We taught ourselves patience. We learned to hold our anger, to use it instead of being used by it. It was the hardest thing our species has ever done." Admiral looked up at the screens showing her fleet. "They gave us a test. They gave us an enemy worthy of our rage, and we passed that test. We destroyed them without becoming them. We proved that humanity can be powerful and still be good." She turned back to the hall. "Now we face a different test. What do we do with the galaxy we just saved?" The silence was absolute. Every being waited for the answer that would decide their fate. "We could rule you," said No one could stop us. We could become the new masters of the galaxy, and you would have to obey. Some humans want exactly that. They say you do not deserve our mercy after the way you treated us. They say we should make you feel what we felt. The elder flickered with desperate colors. Please, it whispered. We were wrong. We see that now. Please show us mercy. Nodded slowly. Yes, she said. You were wrong, but so were we in our own way. We lied to you for 300 years. We pretended to be something we were not. That is not innocent either. We both have things to be ashamed of. She raised her hand and the holographic displays changed. The Terran ships above the conquered worlds began to move, not toward the planets but away from them, opening space, creating room. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy, Admiral announced. We want something harder. We want to be part of it. A ripple of shock passed through the hall. We offer a new alliance. Not the old conquered where some species were treated as better than others. A true partnership where every voice matters equally. Humans will share our technology. We will share our strength. In return, we ask that you teach us the things we still lack. Patience, wisdom, peace. She smiled, and for the first time it was a real smile. We are very good at war. We have never been good at peace. Perhaps together we can learn. The elder moved forward, its damaged body shaking with effort. It stopped before Admiral and did something that no had ever done to a human. It bowed. On behalf of the collective, the elder said, I accept your offer. We will teach you what we know, and perhaps you will teach us how to survive. The commander stepped forward next. He knelt before, his silver scales bright with tears. There were warriors once, he said. We forgot what true strength looked like. You have reminded us. We will stand with humanity. One by one, the species of the galaxy came forward. They bowed. They knelt. They offered their hands and their claws and their tentacles in friendship. Watched from the edge of the hall, tears running down her face. For 20 years, she had pretended to be nothing. Now she watched her people take their rightful place among the stars. Admiral looked out at the beings who had once dismissed humanity as insects. Now they looked at humans with wonder and respect, and just a little fear. The galaxy will never be the same, she said. But that is not a bad thing. Change is how we grow. Today we all begin to grow together. She raised her hand in a gesture of peace. Let the new age begin. And across the galaxy, for the first time in history, humans and aliens stood together as equals, not because they were forced to, but because they had both finally learned what true power really meant. It was not the ability to destroy. It was the choice not to.